fixing lunch. And
Oh, she's back.
There she is.
I'm so sorry, everybody.
We just kept it going.
Good. So what happened while I was gone?
We were discussing our DISC.
Awesome. What did you discover?
Marla's high D.
Marla's a high D. She can be.
Janice is a high C.
Yes. Janice is a high C. Bernard,
am I the only C on here?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
My husband is DC.
So let's talk about that for a second. We tend to be attracted to the opposite of what we are. I'm a high DI and my husband is a high SC. Okay, except when he's in Puerto Rico and then his eye shows up really strong.
Okay.
But we tend to be opposites, which, I mean, you get attracted because it's what you're missing, right? But it also can be a contention in your relationship because you're the opposite. So keep that in mind as well. You also want to consider that when you get ready to hire people. We tend to hire people that we are alike. And that's not necessarily a smart thing to do. You want to hire somebody that is your opposite. My first assistant was a high SC, and it was a match made in heaven because she was the opposite of me. So all of the detail stuff that I didn't want to be bothered with and didn't have time for, she was making sure that we did. Now, with that said, when we met and we started, I did a DISC profile and I reviewed it with her and said, look, here's what happens to me when I'm stressed. I get even shorter. I don't mean to, but I get short and to the point, and I may upset you emotionally, and I don't mean to do that because I can be abrupt, right? I said, what's going to happen with you as a high SC, when you get stressed, you're going to go internally because you don't like conflict, and you're not going to want to share, and you're going to get really moody. And we've got to just work through it. And it was so helpful for us because then once we were working together, we knew what each other's downfalls were. And so when that happened, we just kind of, all right, let's take a step back and let's work through this. Does that make sense to you all? It's important to understand how everybody does. Okay, so we were at high I's. So S's in our office, high S's, steadies. Tracy Quisenberry is a high S. Jim is a high S. He doesn't like to say that he is, but he is. Okay, because he cares about his family, about his unit, right? Mother Teresa is a great example of an S. Okay, for the greater good, but behind the scenes, not making a big deal, right? Now, high C's in our office. Any ideas? Besides Janice.
It would make sense for for Sherry to be.
Sherry is a high C. Michelle Byers is a high C. If you've ever taken any of her classes that she's done, she's very detail oriented. Okay, she's got a lot of other stuff in there, but she's definitely a high C. Okay, so why is it important to understand how, how people work or how they run? What's the value in it?
Because if you give a D too many details, their eyes glaze over and they're gone.
This is true. This is true. I'll tell you a story. Now, my husband is sitting just across the room from me, so I have to be careful about what I say.
Go for it, don't worry.
Okay, so back in the day when I would come home, I would say to my husband, so tell me, dear, how was your day? And he would say, well, I got up and I took a shower and I went down and I got a cup of coffee and a piece of toast. Then I went to the office, and he would tell me every detail of his day, and it would drive me insane because I'm a high DI. So I realized it's not his problem, it's my problem. So I started changing my questions. So I started saying, so tell me about what was the best part of your day? And when I did that, I got the answers that I was looking for. I was looking for unique or different or unusual, or special about the day, not everyday details. Does that make sense? So we have the capability of asking great questions to get what we want when we're working with people that are different styles than we are, okay? For me as a high DI, details are not always, I can get bogged down in the details. I don't like them. I'd rather just, it's easy. We can do that, right? We can do that easy peasy, okay? But the details are there. Oh, there was a big bird that just flew by. Sorry, I was a little distracted. So, but ultimately it's important for us to understand so that we can adapt. So let's talk about the different styles and how they're going to show up in real estate. A high D does not want to see a full-fledged buyer presentation or listing presentation. If you send a pre-listing packet to a high D, chances are it's still going to be on the front porch if you dropped it off early. They won't have looked in it at all, okay? They won't have touched it. If you send a pre-listing packet to a high I, they will have pulled out all of the stuff. Now, keep in mind, my pre-listing packet, for those of you that have seen it, it has a lot of goodies in it. It has a candle, and it has a bamboo, and it has a Starbucks gift card, and some other things, right? When a high D has gotten that, they have all of the items up. They've got the bamboo out on the countertop, you know, like up in the window, and the candle out. They may even have the candle burning because they want me to know how special that was to them. So they'll have already like used some of the items to let me know that they've used it. They won't have looked through the packet of information, the important stuff. They will have just played with the goodies, okay? A high S is going to have looked through everything, again, set all of that stuff up. But a high C, they're the ones that are not only have read through every document, but they're going to have the seller's disclosure and the community association disclosure already completed and a set of keys sitting right there, because on my packet it said, this is what you need to have prepared. They're going to have everything ready to go along with their questions that they have. So just the way that they respond to you or the way that they act, you can learn so much about somebody from the very, very beginning. Okay? You can even tell a lot about them even by the environment that they have. If they have a lot of awards and plaques up, probably a high D. I, probably a lot of splashy color and pictures of themselves out and about in the house, right? A high S is going to have more family stuff, maybe more like save the world kind of stuff, right? Community focused. A high C is going to be probably a very stark environment. There's not going to be a lot of fluff to it, right? Not a lot of color even necessarily. And again, these are all assumptions, but it's based on their style. And if they're really strong in that one area, then that's probably pretty true, okay? Questions so far about DISC? Anything about the styles? Come on. No, it's not letting me do that. Hold on. All right, I'm looking up. Hold please while I do this. And you said it was okay for us to look at yours, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, right, Colt?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so I'm gonna share Colt's. So once you've done a DISC profile, what comes to you is a long description, and it talks about your general characteristics. It talks about the different behavior styles, how you are as a team player, what's your ideal work environment, how you add value to the organization. So this is what I look at. There's two that you want to look at. This one, which is the graph, and the last one, which is more of a wheel, okay? The wheel gives you a better idea of seeing how they all blend together. There is no black or white. It's more of a gray, okay? So he is in the between the S and C category. Janice, you asked if there was anybody else. Well, just Colt is right here, okay? So
Yay.
for the coordinator supporter role, so if we figure out, like if this is a circle, the circle's obviously leaning more towards the S and the C, but it encompasses like this versus this. Does that make sense? There's no black or white. But when we go up here, the way to read this is on the right-hand side, you see the natural style, how they show up regularly. And on the left-hand side is how you show up when you're under stress or when other people are watching, okay? Anything above 50% is considered a strength. It means that it shows up on a regular basis. So for Colt here, what I want you guys to see is that his numbers don't change much from natural to adaptive style. His S comes up a little bit, but everything else pretty much remains the same, okay? What we know, or what I know based on this, is Colt's style tends to lean more towards the slower pace. It doesn't mean he's slow. It means he works at a slower pace than everybody else. Then not everybody, but some of us, right? Right? And his I is strong enough that he really cares about people. So his I and S is high, so that he's more people driven more than anything else. But in real estate, because his D is so low, right? And his C is this high, what I'm going to say to you, Colt, is your challenge is going to be pushing yourself past getting ready to get ready and just doing it. Because that's not your style, is let's just do it. Let's just fake it, right? You need to be prepared and ready to go, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But the S part of it is you really care about people. And that shows up not only in you wanting to be in real estate, but also in your past career in tennis, right? You love helping people. You're a teacher, right? So that shows up here in this graph, that it's very high for you. And it only goes, it comes down a little bit. It just means what happens is, as much as you love helping others, when you're stressed or when you're under stress, or when you think people are watching, that concern might go down a little bit, and your C is probably going to take over, because it's being about being right and being prepared and ready to go. Make sense? All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk a minute about how we present to those different people. So with a high D, how would I present, either if I was doing a buyer consultation or if I had them for a listing presentation? What could I do to ensure that I would get the deal?
You said for a high D,
For a high D.
have like 3 bits of information. That's about it.
Okay. You need to
Don't
know
ask
your
so many
stuff,
questions.
right?
Yeah.
High D's going to expect that you know your stuff. They're probably
Yeah.
not going to want a bunch of paperwork or documents, right? Maybe 1 or 2 pieces. For example, I'm a high DI. Of the listing, the quarterly stats that we have, what are there, 50, 60 pages of those quarterly stats? I pull out 3 pieces that I print out and I carry them with me at all times. And that's what I use. Now, if it's a high C that I'm going to go to, I will print out more of that, because I know that they're driven by numbers. They love to see that kind of stuff. or I'll pull it up on my computer so that they can see it. All right. A D, I'll give you a great example. So we were in a buyer consultation, my husband and I told you my husband is a high SC, and he was building rapport. This was a father and a mother and their daughter, their grown daughter, and the three of them were buying a house together, first-time home buyers. The daughter was leading this. My husband was doing the buyer consultation, and I was sitting observing. This was all in Spanish, so I understood what was going on, but not every single word, okay? So he is going on and telling stories and connecting to them, and then he's talking a little bit about the sale, not a little bit, he was telling them about the wholesale process. At one point, the young lady, she leaned forward and she went, okay, let's go. She was physically saying, I'm done with this, we need to move on, right? My husband didn't clue into that, was like, just kept going on with the story. And she did it again, and finally I ended up intervening, and I just jumped and moved forward to where I knew that she wanted to go. Because she was done. She was done with the stories, she just wanted to get on with the facts, okay? Now that was a very physical example, but we need to clue into those things. It's not just what people say, it's also how they act. So if somebody's getting antsy, you can tell whether they're ready to move on or not, right? Okay, so that's a high D. High I's. What do you think? How do we need to prepare for a high I?
Make it about them and their emotions.
Exactly. Right? Oh, you're just going to love your new house. Get them tied into the emotion of where they're headed. Okay? It's really critical with a high I that you create a connection to them emotionally. Of all of them, for the relationship, the I's and the S's are the most important. Okay? The D's and the C's, they want to trust you, but the others need to connect to you emotionally. And high I, that is, I mean, if they feel like they can trust you, they're ready to move on like that, but they need to feel like they can trust you. So you have to be a really good listener with a high I, because they do like to talk about themselves. And flattery, and I don't mean that in a bad sense, but just complimenting them is a good thing. Complimenting them on their choices, complimenting them on making a good decision and using you, whatever it might be, but giving those compliments are going to help them endear you to them. Okay. Now a high S. How do we know a high S? I remember, I'll never forget, we were in I had a buyer. We were going through the house. The owners came home a little early. We were talking about the neighborhood. And they said, oh, you're just going to love this neighborhood. And oh, by the way, just so you know, our basement door, we always left it unlocked because our house is the tornado watch or the tornado warning house. And I said, excuse me? She goes, oh yeah, we're the only house on the street that has a basement. And so our house was always open. If there was ever a storm, everybody came to our house. It's like, okay, that's a high S, right? They're concerned about everybody else and it's all about the whole group, right? So it was a really good indication that was important. Your high S's are gonna talk about a neighborhood. They're gonna be concerned about who comes into the house. Like from a listing perspective, who is this individual that's gonna buy their home? They're going to want to make sure they fit into the neighborhood. This is not bias. This is just, they want to make sure that it completes the neighborhood, right? So they're very concerned with that. So any way that you can tie that in and talk about the whole, the neighborhood, the features of what's available to them around the surrounding areas, all of that kind of information is going to make an S feel really, really good about the decision that they're making. Okay. Now, a high C. How do we prepare for a high C?
bring to everything.
You do, right? In fact, here's the beautiful thing, Colt. If you've prepared for a high C, then when you show up, no matter what style, you're ready. You just scale back everything that you're going to do. If you know that what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and you're prepared for that high C presentation, then you can scale it back. The trick for somebody like Colt or Janice is not getting sucked into, all right, this is my style. I'm not going to adapt. I'm going to stick to who I am and not read the people and not change or chameleon into them. Does that make sense? Because if I stick to who I am and I have not read the signs well, I don't know that I'm going to get the deal. Okay. So we've got to be aware of that. So a high C, yes, you need to have lots of detail. Know your stats, have the paperwork ready, be prepared that they're going to read through every single document before they sign it. My husband went to a closing and read every single document. It took us 3 hours. Didn't matter. I mean, it was a refi and he's like, I'm going to read it through. He read every single document. So, I mean, they're going to do that. They're going to read all of the information. They're going to take their time, and you just need to be prepared with how are you going to handle that. So with a high C, when I see them sitting there trying to read through a buyer consultation or a buyer agreement form, I'll say, you know what, why don't you take that and read through it, and then you can bring it back with you at our first showing. Oh, okay, great. And they're off the hook because they don't have to sit there and try to read it, because I know that they want to. So you've just got to be aware of it. Okay. First questions about DISC, or how do we present to them, or what do we do?
I have a question. What are those 3 documents that you print?
I like the sale to list price,
Sale to list?
days on market, and I think it's called the game board. It shows of every 100 listing, this is how many got it right and how many didn't get it right. So basically it shows those that got the number of percentage of over of 100 of how many got it right. I like that one because it's good for either buyers to help them understand that, and also the sale to, I said the sale to list price, because I want people to know that going in, that there's not a lot of negotiation if it's priced right and it's staged well. So I do days on market, I do sale to list price, I do the game board, and again, depending on the person, I might add the area comparison of how many houses have sold. If it's a listing, the difference between pricing it right and overpricing it, and if you need a reduction, and what's the average.
Now, you're supposed,
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead, Marla.
Are you supposed to be able to go into those comps and change like the area on the first page? Okay.
Well, you can if you're doing it in PowerPoint. And if you're using something like Google or Chrome, if you're using, like I have a Mac, and the Safari, the Mac does not, even though I can use PowerPoint, it doesn't cooperate well with the document. So if you're struggling and you have a Mac, that may be why. Pardon me. I have to go into the my Google site, and pull from there, and then I'm able to do it.
Okay, that must be my issue. I wasn't able to get that figured out.
Right. Because you can plug in a certain area, and then it allows you to compare area to area.
Yeah, it wasn't letting me change any of the numbers at all. So
probably why. Either you had it pulled up in a PDF instead of the PowerPoint. That could be it. Or you were in Safari and not in Chrome or something like that. Okay.
Okay.
Try
Yeah.
that.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
So what is the value of using DISC?
I think it helps you know your weak areas where you need to improve in, especially under stress and like that. I think like with me specifically on the phone call, like whenever you call up random people and you're talking to a FISBO or anybody, I think it helps you figure out which hat to put on.
Okay.
You know?
And for you, Colt, because your D is so low, you're going to have to really work at being more assertive, especially when you're dealing with a high D, because otherwise they're going to run all over you.
Which is most FISBOs.
Say what?
I said, which is most FISBOs.
There you go, right? So you need to be prepared and know your scripts well so that you can be more assertive in that situation. For sure. Absolutely. Okay. Well, who else? Marla, you were going to chime in. Or Janice?
Yes, I was just going to say that my husband and father are both very high Ds. And with me being a C, I know in dealing with them, get to the facts quickly, stick to the point, you know, just dealing with those personalities, very different than my personality. However, I have noticed where it works well, because I am so detail oriented, they make decisions so quickly. They probably don't like this, but they would have the higher tendency to miss something or make a mistake.
True.
And I'll catch it.
Yep.
So, you know, trying to think, yeah, I'm probably used to dealing with those personalities more, but, you know, having worked with children, you learn to adapt to the different personalities too.
Yep. And that's what this is all about. It's understanding who we are and how we typically function, and then being able to consciously chameleon ourselves to be more and present and communicate more in their style, because when we do that, we connect better to them. Totally. And you're absolutely right, Janice. A high C is going to catch stuff that a D wouldn't. For example, when we went down to Orlando with our granddaughter, our goal was we went because we were going to go to the Harry Potter stuff. Right? Had to be, and of course they make it so that it's in both worlds, so you have to pay double. And I told him, I said, we're getting the fast passes. We're there one day. We're not missing any of the Harry Potter stuff. I want the fast passes. It's worth it. Just do it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he spent 3 days doing the research, and right before he pushed the button, he saw a tiny little thing at the bottom. I'm like, just do it. Just do it already. He looks at the bottom, and come to find out, none of the Harry Potter stuff is allowed on FastPass. So we would have paid for FastPass for no reason. And if it was me, we would have done it, right?
Yes, that's very much, I'm very familiar with that.
Yes.
Only we're opposite. Yes.
Exactly. So because he's very detail oriented and checks and rechecks before he makes a decision, he saved us a bunch of money, which was awesome. Okay. It's the reason I'm going to be able to retire, is because my husband waits to make decisions. So that's a good thing. Okay. Whereas I'm like, come on, let's go, let's do it. Not always the best thing, right? Although I get things done. There you go. I get 10 things done in the time it takes him to do 2 things, right?
Yeah.
Again, we're attracted to people that are our opposites, and it makes us a whole complete, right? It makes a complete unit, which is a good thing, right? You just need to know how to work and deal with each other better, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The same is true with our clients. We complete them in a different way, but we've got to be able to relate to them. So we have to be adaptive in our style so that we can communicate better to them. I have a gentleman that I'm working with right now who is a sweetheart. He's a 90-year-old man. I got an amendment to address concerns back. We are the listing. And they wanted $10,000 in additional closing costs. And what else? They want, and like $3,000 worth of furniture in the house. Or what they said was they were willing to pay $3,000 worth of furniture. Well, when I got him on the phone, he automatically just started, oh, no. I mean, he was so upset that finally I said, sir, I understand that you're concerned. May I share with you the whole picture before we start delving into this? Let me share the whole picture and then where I think we should go with this. It took me about an hour and a half, but I finally got him to the point where he was in total agreement with what I was proposing. But I'll tell you something, and this is not my style. I knew how I was going to have to handle him. So I spent about a half to 3/4 of a day just thinking about the conversation, how it was going to go, how I needed to be prepared. I did all my homework up front, so I had all of those details. So that when we talked, we could walk through it and discuss it rather than just the minute I got it, picking up the phone, okay, we got it. That would have been my knee-jerk reaction because that's my style is, okay, let's go. But I knew I had to have all my ducks in a row when I talked to him. Otherwise, it was going to be a debacle. So it's just being prepared and adapting. Does that make sense? I hope my anecdotal stories are helpful for you all for making the point clearer.
Yes, they are.
Very much.
And it speaks to the fact too that it's not about us, it's about them.
Totally about them. It's not at all about.
Julianne, can you hear me?
Yes, Mary.
Great. I have a question if you don't mind.
No, please.
Okay, so I think we've all encountered one thing for people who are newer. One point about this disc stuff is you also have to take into consideration that you normally have 2 clients, right? And they're probably married. And so you probably are dealing with 2 very different disc profiles. And just because you start talking to one person and they seem to be leading the, charge on buying or selling a house doesn't mean the other person's not listening.
I'm so glad that you said that. You're so
and which brings me to my story is I had a client like this before. They're called the grumpy old men.
Yep.
And I was talking to the lady because we're not going to list for another month, but I just found out that the roof is 20 years old, the HVAC is 10, the water heater's 8, great. Everything the inspector is going to say is end of life. And I said,
You're breaking up a little bit.
We might be proactive.
Anybody else having trouble?
And kind of play offense rather than defense.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you started going
Hello?
in slow motion for a minute.
Okay, I'm so sorry. If I break up again, I'll just give up. I'm driving right now.
That's okay.
Anyways, I talked to the wife, and it's like there's a bunch of ways we can deal with this. I'm just telling you this because it most likely is going to come up in due diligence after you're under contract, and rather than have it blindside us, maybe we should get the roof inspected. We can either just fly by the wind and see what comes at us during due diligence, or we could have it inspected. They could say it's perfect and very functional and has a couple more years, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, had this conversation with her. She was totally open to any suggestions I had. And then the guy starts texting me, but he won't answer me. And he goes, obviously, we're not on the same page since you think this house can't sell in its condition. It's a turnkey house. We're not on the same page. It was really belligerent and saying things that I'd never said, but he wouldn't pick up the phone either. So I was stuck with trying to respond via text. And I just had another client like this in my life. And I'm like, okay, be prepared to be yelled at all the time.
It's true.
Yep. And to a certain extent, you got to be thick-skinned and go, he's going to yell at you, But I'm trying to figure out what profile he is and how I can mitigate any, of these blow-ups. Obviously, I need to talk to both of them at the same time, like conference call them or email them at the same time or something. And better yet, not email them, because he'll just
He will.
spin what I said around into something that's completely not that.
For
So
sure.
conference call him on the phone, but how can I deal with him when I don't really know where it's going to blow up? And what disc profile do you think he has? He's certainly not an I.
He's probably a high D. Probably a
Yeah,
D.
that's probably true.
Maybe even a DC.
Okay.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Because he's avoiding you.
Yeah.
But he's also getting information and then he's making assumptions, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean a style. It's just, I mean, that could just be emotional intelligence too. That's another thing that we need to put into this mix here, y'all, is DISC is not the only thing that plays into it. It could also be stress. It could be, you know, what is going on in their personal life. It could be their emotional intelligence. And I don't mean, I'm not talking about their IQ. I'm talking about how well they handle emotional crisis.
Right.
Right? That's a huge part of it. And we've seen that demonstrated over the last weekend with everything that's going on, right? People have high emotional intelligence and can get out, and other people are resorting to physical violence because they're so passionate about it. So there's a lot of other things that play into it. Our challenge is, how do we adapt? So with this particular guy, I agree with you, Mary. You can't keep playing one another off of each other. They're doing it without even realizing it. You have to have them both in the same room.
Yeah.
Whether it's by Zoom or by conference call. And that's why from day one, we recommend you got to have all the parties involved from the get-go. You can't talk to just one and then not the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just got to be. And thank you for bringing up that point, because you're absolutely right. In most family dynamics, they are going to be different styles. Whether they're
Yeah.
for a house and they have totally different opinions on what they want, or whether they're selling and they got totally different ideas of what they're going to do or how they're going to do it, or even the way they're going to negotiate.
Yeah.
You have to be a chameleon in this business. That's
Yeah.
your job.
I mean, you know, part of the thing is just explain. He says it's a turnkey house. I think it's, you know, it's dated, and somebody's gonna renovate it highly, and you know, on top of that,
Oh, you're breaking up again, kiddo.
mechanicals are old, but he doesn't think the mechanicals are old. I have to send him an inspection. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Nope. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'll stop asking questions after this one.
Okay.
So he thinks it's turnkey house, and
What does turnkey mean to him?
You know,
So in that instance, Mary, I would ask him, so I'm curious, sir, if you were out and you were looking for a house and you ran into a house that had a 20-year-old roof and a 10-year-old HVAC and an 8-year-old water heater, would you be concerned? Try to put him in the eyes of a buyer, help them see the other side. Our job is to help see both sides and help our people to be able to see both sides so that we can negotiate better. Pardon me. So I think having that mindset of looking at both sides is really key. Okay? Other questions about how we can use DISC to our advantage? I think we lost Mary. Anything? All right.
Not at the moment. That was pretty good.
Huh?
Not at the moment. I thought that was pretty good.
Does it make sense to you guys?
Mm.
So here's what I would do is as you're going around in your day for the next week or so, as you're talking with people, I would try to figure out what their disc profiles are. When I meet with each of you, when I first meet with you, the first thing I do is up in the little corner, I put what I think is your disc profile. And most of the times I get it pretty right, but I practice it. You know, that's you know, what I focus on. And I want to understand you guys so that I can help coach you better. I don't have to nudge a DI very much because they're just doing it. Somebody that's more of a high SC, I'm going to have to push a little bit harder because you're going to be hesitant and want to be ready to be ready to be ready. Does that make sense? Okay. A DI I'm going to have to be careful with because they're going to get themselves in trouble because they're just out there doing stuff and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I coached somebody today. Hold on a minute. Do you realize what you just did? You could lose your license for. So there are lots of different ways that I have to relate to people, and a lot of it has to do with their style of their personality. Okay, same is true with your clients. So just get accustomed to reading them well so that you can adapt your style. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
So you said Michelle and Sherry were both high C's.
Uh-huh.
And as realtors, when they were out there buying and selling, which I assume they did in the past.
Yep.
What was their method? I mean, what worked well for them? Do you know?
And I think it's different from everybody, Janice. You're asking with somebody that's got a high C, what can I be successful at? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. In what niche? Yes.
So I think a lot of the high C's are relying on social media to get leads. They are offering things like first-time homebuyer seminars or understanding forbearance because you're in the details and you know it. So they're doing videos on those kind of thing and drawing people to them that way. Okay. Rely on your strength as a way to network. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
You just got to do it.
Find it. Yeah.
Right? Experiment with a few things and give it enough time to see whether it's going to work to your advantage or not.
Right.
Okay. Just got to do it. And that's said like a very high DI. Just do it. Be popular. But it's true. You just got to go do it. Okay. All right, okay, y'all. Take care. On Wednesday, we've got Command Your Designs, which is going to be great, especially for those of you that want to rely on social media. They're going to be showing us how to set up great design advertising stuff that we can do on command. So you don't want to miss that. All right. Sayonara, y'all. Call me if you need
to.
Okay.
Thank you, Julianne.
All right. Take care.